This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. If you've listened to this show, even an iota of a bit, you know that I've had my fair share of traumas. And because of some of those traumas, if not all of them, I turned to this beautiful world of rebellion. And as a teenager into college, and let's be real, I'm pretty much a wild child still, right? That innate wildness that is inside of me is the only way I know how to be, which has slowly started to diminish over the years as I've gone downhill with my health. And I'm struggling lately to kind of figure out who this new person is emerging and if I'm going to lose that wild side of me, right? And people are probably listening, going, there's no way she can lose her wild side, right? But there's this pill that's been hard for me to swallow, that I can't drop the idea that some of my shenanigans, my wildness, my wild and crazy, whatever it was I was doing, drugs and promiscuity or whatever the hell was going on in my world, that don't have something to do with why I'm sick. And so between my behavior, being a wild and crazy person, as well as trauma, you add those together, it feels like a perfect storm. So here I am faced with trying to do some new treatments towards my health and my well-being, because as we've talked about ad infinitum, I have tried so many different things. And especially in the chronic pain world, we spend so much money and so much time and so much research ending up getting worse. And so now I'm going to start into a new way of being a wild and crazy gal, right? So I'm finding that this excitement to find a better way to treat my pain and to treat depression, to treat PTSD, to treat anxiety is going to be with psychedelics. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is being able to tell my parents that I'm doing drugs. It's been a conversation that I've been wanting to have with my parents for so very long. And they are in complete support of this mission, right? So I want to talk about this. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today, Dr. Laila Contractor. Hello, darling.
Hi.
How are you doing today? Thanks for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So Dr. Contractor is a double board certified concierge and integrative child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist in Irvine, California. That's in Orange County. She works collaboratively with her patients to use traditional as well as evidence-based alternative approaches to the treatment of psychiatric challenges. Her life's work has deep roots in the development of a deeper understanding of the treatment of trauma in children and adolescents at risk for hospitalization and suffering from depression and other issues. She is an advocate. My God, is she an advocate for children and adolescents to receive the services that they deserve in schools and at home. This highly credentialed, wise, and humble little lady over here has built a successful career around this type of psychiatry in the world of integrative medicine, and we have her here today. So I'm rolling out the red carpet for you here, my dear. And I'd like to start, yes. I'd like to start with what happened in April of 2019 when your world changed. And let's take it from there.
Yeah, so I was in it was a regular work day for me. I was actually working from home, and I started to develop what was feeling weak and almost paralyzed, starting from my feet upward. And I had difficulty even typing simple notes. So I called my boss, told her, hey, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm going to go see the doctor, thinking that, I don't know, they'll figure it out. In a couple of weeks, I'll be back, or even less than that. And that's started my journey. I went from doctor to doctor. Some of them were empathetic. Some of them were just awful. My first neurologist basically told me that was all in my head. Nothing wrong.
Oh, I love that. Was it a man?
Right. I find it funny. They were saying this to psychiatrists as if I had not thought of that as a possible option to what was occurring.
That's a good one. That's funny. So, very strong.
I just kept going to different doctors. Lost my medical disability thanks to that neurologist who didn't believe what I was going through.
Oh my gosh.
That became a process. I met some amazing doctors who really validated how I was feeling, but also said they couldn't figure out why why was this happening? I even ended up going to Mayo Clinic, again, having full workups. And I posted all my labs, all the imaging, everything I had on this group called Physician Mommy Group.
On Facebook?
On Facebook, of course. And I
Yeah.
got all these answers, and I followed every lead because I had no clue what was going on. Every single lead I followed. And then I kept getting these DMs or private messages on the side from functional medicine or integrative medicine practitioners who kept saying, look, your case is kind of very typical of what we see. Like, you need to find someone, you need to see someone. And somebody actually recommended Dr. Kelly McCann, who is in Costa Mesa near Newport Beach. I finally reached out to her. I met her and I was pissed. I'm like, this is a riot. I was like, this costs money, like all this money. And then on top of that, she diagnosed me with Lyme. I'm like, how many people have Lyme out there? Like,
me too. Yeah, we're just like this whole team.
So I was like, screw it. So she gave me some supplements. I'm like, forget this. And I continued to deteriorate to the point where I was just in bed all the time. And I would just save my energy to make sure I had energy once my 3 kids came home.
Ugh.
And one day, one of these I wish I could remember what her name was, Integrative Medicine people just sent me a message. She's like, how are you doing? What's going on? And I was like, hey, it's worse. And she's like, why aren't you trying what Dr. McCann is saying? She's like, it's an herb. She's like, what do you have to lose? She's like, is it going to get worse than what's happening to you now?
Yeah.
And that finally sunk in. That was October 2019. I took the herbs for a couple of days, thought it was not doing anything. And then what I got was called a Herx reaction, which is when you have a die-off of whatever the virus, bacteria, whatever you're trying. And so I knew that, shoot, Dr. McCann was onto something, that I did have Lyme, and I was starting to feel the effects. And I became a believer, but I went to her and I was like, look, one thing at a time, Dr. McCann.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you say that, because I've been working with a lot of functional, I've been doing all the diagnostics and I've been talking about it often, but now I'm at this place where I have so much information, and I'm kind of at this place where, well, one group that I started that I, have paid for, because this is what I do, has me on this like rigorous supplementation that I cannot do. My little body I'm trying to just learn how to eat again. And eat for my body now versus what the body was before I was sick. Because if I eat the way that I was before I got sick, it doesn't work for me at all. And so now that I've gotten myself to eat again, which has been a huge challenge, one that I did not know I was going to be stuck up against, but here I was. Now I'm here with this group, and I'm literally have to swallow like, I don't even know, 72 different things a freaking day, and I can't do it. I cannot do it. And so I'm kind of like almost feeling defeated yet again. Not almost, I am feeling defeated again, because I'm like, I'm spending all this money. I'm doing this again. I got all excited, and then I haven't been able to hold down 90% of so I basically just threw up all of the money that I spent on supplements. So I get it. One thing at a time, that's slow, because how do you know what's going to work and what's not when you're taking 72 things at the same time? I mean, dear Lord, so frustrating.
I agree. I've at several places in time I've been on that. And actually currently is one of the times where I'm back to like, I don't know how many supplements.
Oh God.
But I think it's really important, and whoever you work with realizes that it isn't feasible. I mean, I was at a place at one point where I was getting so sick from all of these, and I felt like I was just eating pills. Literally, I just felt like, because I didn't have an appetite for anything else.
Right.
So
yeah. So okay, so you ended up with your diagnosis of Lyme. Was there anything else that they found? Any other co-infections or anything else? You're smiling, and I'm assuming that's of course there was, Lyndsay.
Not in December of 2019, I kept telling everyone, I was like, I am not remembering things. I was like, I had notebooks in each car in my purse just to write things down because I kept forgetting.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, you're a stressed out mom of 3. They finally did neuropsych testing on me, and they showed my verbal memory was in the less than first percentile.
Whoa.
And so I started treatments for that, which were extremely helpful. Fast forward, COVID came. I had to stop all my treatments, and I started getting really sick again. My story is complicated by the fact, and it's almost funny in a dark humor sort of way, is that one of the things that was making me sick prior to me becoming ill in April, I was in perimenopause, full blown. I was like, I'm a psychiatrist. I got this. I'm going to give myself some Prozac and Trazodone and I'm going to call it a day. So, in hindsight, I developed pretty significant severe autoimmune reaction to the Prozac and later Trintellix that actually people kept thinking it looked like MS and myasthenia gravis combined.
Huh. Jeez
And
Louise.
I was getting all these intensive treatments. And as I was sitting, I was getting IVIG and it worked. It worked. It's a infusion treatment where you go 5 days a week. I was sitting there 5 to 6 hours a day, once a month, and I'd feel better for a couple of weeks and then go back down. But as I was sitting in the chair one day, I was like, I wonder if it's my antidepressant.
Oh, wow.
Anyways, and sure enough, it was.
Yeah. We just have to be very careful. And I think one of the things that I certainly have learned with these different drugs that they give you for whatever it might be, pain, insomnia, anxiety and depression, all of our little bodies are so very different. And, giving the 250, pound man the same dose as this one for something to treat right out of the gates is probably not the right way to go. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of malpractice in my opinion, in a couple different cases with my body, some of which set me backwards because, it messed with my noodle so much. It made me doubt myself. It made me not want to live anymore. It was very, very scary. And have had a similar event happen over the past couple of weeks. And so there's been just some really like, whoa, this is why I don't take pills. This is why I listen to myself and my body. And I keep telling people, don't put me on that stuff. Don't give me that. Don't try me. And sure as shit, as soon as I did it again, I don't know who I am. I don't remember. There are black holes all over the place. I don't remember where I was, who I talked to. And it's like, that's from this one little pill, like that's some scary stuff. So now, how did you get through that part? Because obviously you're doing better now. We're all going to be a little bit sick here. It's just what we're doing, unfortunately, here in America. But so what did you do to get yourself feeling better? And where did, I want to talk about the psychedelic side of things, because I know that's really what we want to start talking about here and how that came into your world through this. But what did you end up doing to start feeling better?
Well, I had to get off of the antidepressants. At that point, I was on Trintellix. And don't let anyone ever tell you there's not a discontinuation syndrome or withdrawal.
Yeah.
It was horrific. And for months, I was really suicidal, understanding why I was suicidal. But every time I lowered, it was like white knuckling it, bracing myself.
That's scary.
It's scary. And yet for me, I was like, oh my God, my poor patients. I was like, how... I know they've gone through this, they've explained it, but to really feel how bad it was and to know that I didn't have an option at this point, I had, and actually even previously on another one, I had autoimmune reaction very different from what had happened with these two. So I was like, that was off the table. So I almost felt like, what now? What do I do now? And so I know in the long run, it was the universe's way of making me deal with my trauma, which I had not done. So
I know.
Well, I just felt like what I had been through was nothing compared to my patients. You hear these like most horrific stories and I'm like, my stuff?
No way. You can't do that. Nobody else should either. And I talk about this. In fact, I talked about it on the episode that just came out a couple of weeks ago, specifically about do not little T versus big T, our little T's and our big T's. It's something that somebody sees, like I'll even take it down to like a horror movie, right? Like somebody can watch a horror movie and have absolutely no nightmares whatsoever. Doesn't faze them. There's another person who can watch a scary movie and they'll have nightmares all night. And that's how they roll. It's the same kind of thing for me. Like if you've been traumatized, don't make it seem like it's not that big of a deal just because somebody else has gone through something worse than you. That is a terrible thing to do. You have to treat yourself because you are you. You're not everyone else. So don't do that again, okay?
I won't.
Okay.
I haven't been. But that brought me to I finally actually signed up for Integrative Psychiatry Fellowship because seeing how much that Integrative Medicine had helped me, I wanted to really bring this to my patients. And anyways, it's through that. And a huge chunk of our lectures were actually on trauma. And so I got introduced to several trauma experts, most notably Dr. Gabor Mate. So I was late for this class. I was like, I'd already been doing EMDR for months and months. They've been unraveling, and I kept having more and more memories about just how unsavory my childhood was. It's like stuff I didn't want to remember kept coming up.
Of course.
And I met with him, and in 20 minutes, he nailed it. I was like, how am I a psychiatrist? It's been in therapy this long, off and on. We're supposed to be in therapy. We're supposed to.
Sure.
And he just got it. So I ended up signing up for his year-long fellowship. And that made me dive into my own trauma even deeper. And I went to see him at a conference because now I'd become a total groupie after meeting with him. Because I met with him and he's like, you need to read my book, When the Body Says No, and call me after you've read it. I was like, okay.
I've read it. Yeah.
Anyways, if you have not read it, I know you have, but I mean, to your listeners, it's a fascinating book on a lot of this research that's been buried on really the trauma ideology, or kind of how trauma can kind of wreak havoc in our body, whether it's ALS, whether it's breast cancer, colon cancer, scleroderma. It's fascinating research, which is unfortunately no longer being done.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting book. Anyways, I did his program, and through that is how I got introduced to psychedelics, because I went to follow him at a conference that was on psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. I knew nothing about psychedelics, zero. And as I sat there and listening, I was like, how have I been a supposed trauma psychiatrist who doesn't know that this medicine, which has been around for thousands of years, has the ability to really heal us?
And it's so interesting when you can Google it like crazy, like ayahuasca, for example, right? Like that's a type of psychedelic that you use. I think a lot of people are throwing that out as that means psychedelics as a whole. And so but it's a type of psychedelic. There's all these different, like psilocybin is another one. There's multiple levels and types that you can use based on what you're going after, essentially. What are we trying to get out of our bods? And when you read about these things, they're fairly scary. There's a lot of gunk that comes out of your bod. And so they've got these retreats, but we do need to be very, very careful. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, because there are so many people doing the psychedelic thing now. Now it's to the point that I signed up for like email marketing for all these different brands to see what they're doing. I mean, now there's like mushrooms and everything. And you're like, okay, come on. Like, you're not selling me a gummy that has mushrooms in it, and that's going to be the route we're going to take. We're talking about something that's much more deep rooted in spirituality and emotion and getting out our gunk and getting out our trauma and getting out some of our pain. That's a little different than going to your dispensary and grabbing a quote unquote shroom in a box. You know what I mean? So with Gabor Mate and getting involved with him and bringing psychedelics in, can we talk about what psychedelics have come into your world and what kind of therapies you've been working with for yourself and your patients?
Yeah, so Dr. Gabor Mate's method of treatment involves, it's kind of an eclectic mix. So it involves polyvagal theory, which is the idea of how to regulate your nervous system that has been largely dysregulated by trauma.
Yeah.
A very systematic way, a very effective way. Because how can we even begin to talk about these things or experience these things if our bodies are so dysregulated? His method also uses somatic experiencing. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote the famous book, And the Body Keeps Score. But I'm a big believer that our bodies store all of this, and in various ways. And the somatic experiencing really helps to offload kind of where we're storing it, have an understanding of how our bodies respond to trauma. And he also uses another method of treatment called internal family systems. And that was developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And he wrote a book, it's called No Bad Parts, but really how we have all these various parts of us that show up for different reasons, whether it's to help save us, whether it's to put out a fire. So it's a very interesting way of looking at why does your body function the way it does when it's being traumatized. It has a good reason. There's purpose behind what it's doing. So I found that to be actually some of the most effective treatment I've ever had. What's very interesting, and Bessel van der Kolk talks about this, when you look at fMRI studies of a brain of someone who's had experienced trauma, your Broca's area, which is your speaking area, often is understimulated or shut down. we are actually not meant to talk about our traumas or find it very difficult to talk, right? If you meet someone who's had significant trauma, do they want to talk about it?
Well, actually, I have found by doing this show, there are a lot of damn people that want to talk about it now.
Yes. So, but it comes out, but there are often times, and especially depending on how shut down your nervous system is, you really have this inability to talk about it. And sometimes just because you can talk about it doesn't mean you should, because it can lead to you feeling pretty dysregulated.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when it comes to this show, and we were talking about it earlier, I find that that I actually do worse when I'm not doing my podcasting. Like I took a month off of it, and I wasn't talking about things, and I wasn't meeting people that have hopeful stories, that have big wins, that have gone through all of the muck. And it's almost like I lost a piece of me by not doing this. And it is hard for me to talk about trauma. And there are days where I don't want to. But that's a really interesting point, because I am constantly talking about this now, and I didn't want to. And I had to get to a place that I was ready. Doesn't mean that it's easy, but I certainly feel much better when I do, because it opens up a little bit of a mini aha every time I'm doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I'm remembering things that, like to your point, that you were like, oh my gosh, all these things are flooding in. And that's been happening to me lately too. Stuff that's coming out of me that I totally forgot, like completely and totally pushed back. And we're talking when you're like 9, 10 into your early teens, where that formative part was so screwed up. And I'm just, it's very scary to think about all of the things that have happened, and that I've been as successful and as good as I've been in life, considering.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you a pat on the back once you get through all of it. So why are we not supposed to be talking about it sometimes?
So I'll give you an example. It's some of my patients who come in and really have this need to, understandably, especially if they feel like they have someone who can validate what they've been through, empathize. Because what I could be leaving them with, and which often does happen, is now I've unraveled them and I haven't given them a way to help them put themselves
Back together.
at least back together to be able to go out. And this is where it's really important to read the room, read the energy, that what am I feeling from them? If I'm feeling overwhelmed, uncomfortable, chances are they are, and I'm picking up. So how can I help them? How can we slow down the pace? And we had an amazing psychologist named Ariel Schwartz, who does a lot of yoga for trauma.
Mm-hmm.
She really talks about this, the dangers of having people just completely offload. You could be really destabilizing them and not doing them any favors. I mean, in some ways, we don't have to know every detail of the trauma. We just need to know that it happened.
That happened, yeah.
To now work with it. So being really careful with patients, because we want them feeling better or hopeful when they're leaving, and not leaving them in a position to just decompensate.
Yeah. They're like, great, you've unraveled me. And now what?
Now, exactly.
And that's almost kind of how I'm feeling right now a lot, especially with all of the testing and stuff. I'm now here and I'm just kind of like, okay, so now what do I do? Because I've Googled it to the T, and everything I read everywhere about Lyme, it's not great. And there's all kinds of different remedies and all of these different things. But I do want to circle us back into the therapeutic aspect of the psychedelics and how that has come into play in your world, and how you are approaching that in your business and your practice as well.
So for me, after sitting at that conference, I really thought ayahuasca spoke to me. It seemed like that was the medicine I wanted to work with. And so I was working with a therapist that actually Gabor had recommended that I work with. So I asked her, I was like, hey, do you know anybody or anywhere where I could go for this? Okay, I didn't realize she's extremely humble. She wouldn't call herself this, but I didn't know she was a shaman. So.
Well, because we see that everywhere now. Everyone's a damn shaman.
Right. Well, she'd be mad hearing me say this, but no, she's legitimately.
Okay, she's not a shaman,
but she is. And so I went to my first retreat. Now she, has extensive trauma training. She's a trauma therapist. She has done her own work. So that was the first time. And after my first night, I could not believe I hadn't done this before.
Yeah.
It was like, so I sat for 3 nights, And again, it was her and another shaman, very well, people who are trained very in trauma treatment, people who know even the helpers there. This is a very well held thing. But I couldn't believe it was like it felt like 5 years of trauma work in 3 nights.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And everybody that's done it says about the same thing, that they're like, I got so much done in such a short span of time. It was unbelievable, and continue to go do them. Have you done more than one time?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
The thing that I find helpful is I feel like it's helping. The problem with trauma is it gets stuck in your brain, literally stuck. It gets stuck in the limbic system. So you have the amygdala, the fight or flight area that kind of super revved up. But what people don't talk about more is that it's looped in this limbic system with the hippocampus, which is our memory center. It keeps you stuck. It keeps it keeps you stuck at where the trauma happened. And so what the ayahuasca does, the medicine, is really helps your body and brain metabolize the trauma, move past it. So you don't have to be stuck there.
Can you talk about that? Because I find that to be a very interesting way of viewing, because when we think about our metabolism, we think about like burning our fat and getting in shape, and we do that. And so when you're talking about the ability for us to be able to basically feel the burn, but burn out the trauma to a certain extent, it sounds really, really wonderful.
Drinking ayahuasca is challenging. It is very challenging, and you are put through a lot. But the idea is to find meaning in the challenge and knowing that it's helping you. So I'll give you an example. That first night, I basically really got to visualize a perpetrator, someone who had really harmed me. And I felt the pain of being harmed. And then all of a sudden, I could see where I was, what was happening, but I all of a sudden was almost as a bystander. Not almost, I was a bystander to what was happening. And I just started getting these insights like, man, yeah, that sucked. That really sucked. But it happens. It was an experience that my body happened to have, and it happens. And while this was happening, actually, my body was shaking. So you often will discharge energy that you've been stored. And it was just kind of like, that's done.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And it was interesting. So with ayahuasca or with any of these medicines that we work with, you often go in with an intention. So my intention was teach or show me, right? Help me understand how my trauma affects my body. And when I refer to we refer to ayahuasca almost like a spirit.
Sure.
She's considered like the grandmother of psychedelics. She kept me changing it to show me how the trauma my body has experienced is affecting me. So it's not my trauma. It's not who I am.
Right.
It's the fact that my body just happened to experience it. And it was interesting. She kept having me rephrase my intention before she took me into the journey even further.
Yeah, that's insane, because just hearing, with a lot of trauma, especially in women, at least I can speak for myself, and I certainly have heard other women talk about it, is the word shame. And I know that there's a lot that comes in our world from shame, and we respond to shame differently. And I know for me, I acted out on it. I acted out in rebellion, and I acted out in other ways that were more harmful than the initial trauma that happened in the first place, right? So just continuously traumatized myself, and then would put myself into situations where I could have gotten in more trouble or gotten more traumatized, and that happened. Some of that my own fault, and some of it from other people that I have no control over. But it's just interesting how that intention, and I'm trying to be more intentional even with my eating, because with my disordered eating, giving intention to the bite that I'm taking. And I know it might sound woo-woo, but for me, it's really working. Even just saying the strawberry is giving me nutrition so that I live it healthier, just like silly little things like that. It totally makes you slow down your eating. It made me slow down my thought process. I didn't even really want to watch TV or do anything. I was just chilling, just thumbing through like an anti-inflammatory magazine, because that's what I buy at the supermarket. But it's just, it's neat that experience is different for everyone. And so it's good to hear what yours is like. And it's been different. Everybody that I've asked that's done it, their stories are all so different. But the one thing that's unique is that it is harder than anything they've ever done. and that it was an enormous challenge to do it. Those are two things that I'm not afraid of. So I think I'm good. But I was reading something also that it can cause a little bit of anxiety when you first start, when you get there, when you get to the place, because you're anxious, especially people that have anxiety, because you're worried about what's going to happen. I'm always worried about what's going to happen. That's just who I am. Did you experience any anxiety with that, with going through it? Certainly not after you've been through it a couple times, but for your first one, did you have any anxiety or worry about it?
I just remember feeling so desperate to get better. I think I didn't read up anything about it. I actually implicitly trusted my therapist / shaman.
That's good.
I guess so.
No, it's good because I don't.
I didn't read. I was just like, Gabor said it's going to work.
We're going this way.
My therapist says it's going to work. It's going to work. I do remember having a little bit of apprehension.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Ironically, I think in subsequent, after that first retreat, when I went back, I had actually more anxiety. No, because now I knew what was going to come up for me. So,
but you keep going back. How many times have you done it?
I have sat 9 times.
Whoa, 9 times. That's crazy. There's another really cool chickie in my life that's done it similar. I mean, I don't even know. I think she's done over a dozen of them. So is there, and that begs the question, so why so many? Like if you get so much out in this first session, am I this screwed up? I got to do 20 of these puppies. So why is it that people do keep going back to fix themselves, if you will? And I don't know if that's the right verbiage for it, but you're not the first person that I've talked to, obviously, that has gone multiple times. So I want you to speak on that one.
Well, it's not a one and done. I was really hoping that it would. I know. But there's different intentions you work on. So one of the things that I deal with is right-sided weakness, which I have finally really had to accept that there is a psychosomatic component to it.
What is that?
A childhood experience.
Oh, right-sided weakness?
So according to the other shaman where I go, he had actually very severe right-sided weakness to the point where by age 19, they were talking about cutting his leg off because it was in so much pain.
Whoa.
Even though they couldn't find, there's other reasons. Some shaman feel that you're not really fully giving your gifts to others. There's different explanations. But yeah, there's always work. I mean, until we die, there's always some work to do on ourselves.
Well, I'm definitely on like my 9th or 10th life. I'm exhausted. I am just exhausted.
Can we call it a day? I had an intuition reading done once, and the woman's like, your soul came here and it likes to have experiences. And I was like, tell my soul I'm good with book learning. I'm good.
I'm good. Like you can chill on this whole coming back thing.
I know, right?
I talked to somebody the other day that she's a guest on my show. She'll be coming out in a couple of weeks, but we talked about how she's convinced that I've had past lives and that I have future lives. That it's like so neat. And I love that idea because even though I joke about it, like I'm exhausted and all that, I totally feel that if that actually is legit, then I for sure have been doing this for some time. In some weird way, I swear, was I like a Cleopatra? Come on. We got to find some really cool bitches from the past that I could have been. So now, in order to do something like this and do this safely, because I think especially people that have gone through trauma, safety is a big issue for us, safety and trust. And those turn into depression and anxiety and disorders and, alcoholism and drug use and all that. We all know these things. And I'm a walking billboard for like half of that crap. So when it comes to doing this and choosing them, what is the best way that we go about trying to find, obviously we have a you right now that we can DM you and we can get in touch with you to find out. But let's say somebody's not listening to this episode and they just want to listen. They want to find out how to do this. How do we help guide people to the right places? Because it's turned into such a thing now to do that everybody wants to do it. And I know here in the United States that it's not the same as if it's in another country. Am I correct in that? I've read so many different things, viewpoints on it. So
yeah, I'm super particular. I mean, honestly, ironically, I'd signed up to do the retreat somewhere else, another retreat, and I backed out.
Yeah.
And I kind of just honored it.
Yeah, and I think that's wise.
And again, I think they were amazing. I actually think it's a very well-held place. It's hard. So California, likely, I'm hoping the governor will sign it, is decriminalizing psilocybin and DMT or ayahuasca. But, I'd have to say largely it's hard. Again, the people I go to, I trust because they know how to hold the space. They've been trained in various trauma treatments.
Yes, don't just Google it, guys, and go to a retreat. All right. Like let's be really wise about it.
You have to be extraordinarily cautious. And I wish I could give a better answer, but I see a lot of people claiming that they're shaman, and they may very well be. So I don't want to say that they're not, but it really has to be somebody that you've met with. When I look back, I really did about 1.5 years of extremely intensive trauma work before I even came to the medicine. So the other thing I see, and I get patients in my office, I mean, everybody, I think I know the desperation I felt.
Yeah.
You just want to get better. Yeah. And but if you're actually not prepared, there was one night I sat and the intention was, and the shaman told me that to do this, teach me about my childhood experience. And the entire night, I just wanted to hang myself.
Oh my God.
And again, but I know.
Heavy.
I know.
Hello.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's been a heavy couple weeks over here, so I'm very sensitive to this topic.
But I say that not for shock value. I say that had I not been prepared and had I not known that ayahuasca was just trying to show me just how bad it was for me as a kid, that's how bad I felt. Had I not had that preparation or the people, like I may have done something stupid. Like I might have seen that as a call to action. I don't know. I don't know what I would have seen, but I knew I kept staying with my breathing. I kept thinking of my 3 children, but it kept coming back. And it was actually as horrific as it sounds, doing that for 5 to 6 hours. It was extremely validating as to why do I just really never remember being happy as a kid? Like what? I think there was a lot of validation in that the experiences I had were pretty awful for me.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you put it for you, because there are a lot that circles back to almost what we were talking about, the big T, little T's, but it is for you. It is you. So do not judge yourself against others and what has happened to them or not happened to them, what happened to you, what could have happened to you, what did, all of that. Because you can go down every slippery slope and point at other people and not actually work on yourself and value where you've come from and what your body has experienced. Because there are places I've been that I don't even remember. You know, there's things that have happened in my body and to my heart and my soul that I don't even know about. I have no clue. So there are parts of me that are a little bit apprehensive, but I know that I'm ready for this. I've been talking about doing this for, I don't even know, probably 2 or 3 years. But I haven't done a ton of research on it. I've mostly just done what I'm doing right now, which is talking to somebody who's been through it multiple times and has said the same thing. The safety part of it, there's anxiety that comes up, but also to go with someone that, you know, you get your references. Don't just willy-nilly find someone online and go do this. Like you have to come from someone that has referrals, can talk to you about the experience, can tell you what you might be up against, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we can only be so prepared. You know what I mean? I mean, to the point that you won't end up ever going because you'll never be prepared enough. Like at some point, you got to pull the plug here, guys, and do something like this, if this is something that is of interest to you. And so with that being said, if people are interested in talking to you further, how can they find you in relation to this, as well as what you do for a living, which is outside of, talking about psychedelics, but because we could sit here and talk for another hour or so about all of the other things that we want to talk about. But where can we find you, and what is just absolutely just driving you to help others right now in your life? Because I know that I know what mine is, and that's this show and giving my pain purpose. So for you being here with us today, what can we leave our audience with? Besides, I get to talk to my parents about doing drugs. I might actually record that conversation and play it for y'all.
I think for me, and as somebody I feel like my specialization is trauma, is to really, we call it post-traumatic growth, but helping people come to that other side, finding meaning in what they've been through, helping them kind of function, live up to their potential. And it can be all various types of trauma, whether you're an athlete who's had a horrible injury, whether you've had just horrific sexual abuse, and we talk about little T's, but what I find often, which is a lot more subtle, And we would consider a little t is constant invalidation, or even your parents, like the neglect. Neglect is one that can be subtle. Just being really ignored by your parents and having your parents out to lunch, not because they were bad people, but because they were doing the best that they could do.
Right.
That's a huge one that I see a lot that's hard to place your finger on.
Yeah, neglect. Yeah. Everyone's kind of sitting in their car at their desk right now, nodding their head going, yeah, I think I was probably neglected. I know we feel this element, I think a lot of it within our age bracket too. We find we're all raised in like the 70s and early 80s or what have you. And there's a lot of us in this bracket where it was kind of like baby boomer parents. And they're just kind of like, well, good luck with all of that. Just, go to college, get married and pop out kids. And anything that happens in between, we're not really sure, but have fun with all of that. And here we are doing podcasts about how fucked up we are. Going to other countries to throw up for 5 days. This is what the baby boomers have done to us.
That's really funny.
I know. Okay, so we're going to end this with this note because this is fun. This is really, really important stuff, though, and I definitely don't want to make fun of it at all. But it is something that is important to me and where the journey that I'm on and where I am going with this. And it's so nice to meet people with you that have come back from it alive, stronger and healthier and more wise within yourself and being able to let go of a lot of stuff. And I know that that's hard for all of us to do because it's hard to look at ourselves in the mirror sometimes and face our demons, and we all have to. And it sounds like, you've done a lot of it, and I know I have. I'm just kind of like getting to the point where I'd like these like full-blown 5-day or benders to get some of this out because I'm tired of chasing this. And I know my listeners are as well. Tired for me and also tired for themselves and tired for their loved ones or whoever, because a lot of people will listen to this show because it's for them or it's for others that they're dealing with within their life. Because I know how hard it is on my parents and my friends and my sweetie when I'm just like I've been for the past couple of weeks, just been very, very hard and they don't know what to do. And so we can help them, by helping ourselves as well. So I'm just grateful for your time today with us. So thank you. And obviously I'm reaching out to you to talk to you about everything that I have to get started on with this because exercise the demons, Well, we can find Dr. Laila Contractor at Laila, Laila Contractor, MD.com. Her website is beautiful and it talks all about her services, what integrative medicine is, all the treatment areas, how expensive she is not, and information to contact her as well. So reach out to her if you have any questions. Feel free to slip into my DMs at thepaingamepodcast.com. If you want me to connect you with her, I'm happy to do so. Thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. You are exclusively invited to share this finding meaning in what you've been through in life, VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Do you know someone who is living in and with chronic pain or has been dealing with some of the traumas that we've been talking about today on this episode? If you do, send them our way here to the Pain Game Podcast. We're here. I would love to connect with them and hear their heartfelt stories of strength and wisdom and, of course, all of your awesomeness. And review. Stop what you're doing if you can and give this show a review or two. That would be awesome. We are helping to spread the awareness of trauma and healing together. And please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.